welcome to the Okanagan Reader. I'm your host, Jim Bauer. This reading is Chapter 23 of Green Comet, the first book in the Green Comet trilogy. Today I have a challenge for my viewers. Any of the audience who are local, I challenge you to identify this location. It should be easy enough for anybody who pays attention. Okay, in Chapter 23, in Chapter 33, Elgin and Stanton are stunned by what Fran said. Elgin knows it's right, though he doesn't want to. The visitor is a machine, and it won't listen to reason. They have to separate the comets. They just put them together, made a big deal of it, and now they have to separate them. But first, they need to have a debate to let the people decide whether or not they will separate the comets. I'll let you have another look at the location. All right, here we go then.
Chapter 33. They Need a Debate. Elgin and Stanton looked at each other, speechless, then back at Fran and Buzzard. They didn't speak either, so Elgin finally said, "Just to make sure we heard you right, did you just say that we have to separate the comets?" "Yes," said Fran, while Buzzard nodded. Elgin didn't want to admit it, but he heard the music in her words. He couldn't believe that he could tell if something was right from so little information, so he found himself questioning it again. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I mean, of course you're sure, but how can you be sure?" So Fran explained while Buzzard provided supporting comments. They were speculating about the visitor since before Elgin's waking. Even then, before anyone knew what it was, they were sure it was artificial. Then after that was established, they became convinced that it was sinister, mostly because it wouldn't talk to them. She reminded Elgin that they had talked about that. "Yes," he said, "and I knew you were right then, too." She smiled at him. "And then I did all that research before we sent the message to Orange Comet, and I began to have troubling feelings about it." She explained how she and Buzzard analyzed the data and tried to form an idea of what the visitor was and what it wanted. We couldn't come up with anything. We couldn't understand why its actions didn't tell us anything about its character. Then, when Orange Comet gave them the idea that it was a von Neumann machine, they realized that it had no character to discover, at least not the kind of character they were looking for. Elgin glanced at Stanton, who appeared to be happy to let him continue, so he said, "You mean it's a machine and doesn't act like us?" "Exactly." "Okay, we can see that, but how does that lead to dismantling the comets?" She looked at Buzzard, gathering her thoughts, then she nodded. "Once upon a time," she began, receiving an appreciative chuckle, "some people sent out a von Neumann machine to explore a neighboring star system. The spacecraft would have been small and it probably would have been alone, although they might have sent two for redundancy. This robot would have taken decades to get there and would have been programmed to follow specific procedures upon its arrival." Stanton said, "It was supposed to explore, look for signs of life, secure resources, and replicate itself." He shrugged when Elgin raised his eyebrows at him. "One of my engineering profs was a space buff." "Your professor was right," said Fran. "So that's how we think the visitor started out. But something must have gone wrong. Maybe there was an error in the programming that didn't show up until much later. Or maybe a cosmic ray zipped through it, knocking out some crucial bits. It's even possible that its creators intended it to be this way. Although I doubt that," said Fran. "It doesn't make any sense outside of one narrow, insane point of view." They could keep it as one of the possibilities, though one with a low probability. The important thing was that it went badly, and the machine's goals got magnified beyond reason. "Your hypothesis, then," said Elgin, "is that the machine went rogue and its mission of exploration has turned into an obsession, with its original goals perverted into conquest and destruction. Yes, although I wouldn't call it conquest. We don't believe it thinks that way. Her face suddenly showed horror followed by deep pathos. What is it? Asked Elgin. She swallowed and said in a whisper, We think it's just securing resources, as in its original programming. It needs to eliminate any threat to those resources. That horrified Elgin, too. Do you mean we're nothing more than pests to it? No different from the pests that eat our crops? That's right. It might see us as an infestation, or we might be an infection like a mold on our crops, or it could see us as nothing more than simple corrosion, eating into its resources. They stood in silence, contemplating the ultimate and unintended consequences. It's one thing to be killed by someone who means you harm, but it's quite another when they don't care about you at all. They couldn't think of the visitor as an enemy now, because they were irrelevant to it except as a threat to its mission. Stanton, his voice low, nearly a growl, said, I'd like to get hold of those programmers, just for a few minutes. Elgin brought them back to the moment. That explains things pretty well. It makes a kind of sense now, but you still haven't shown why we need to separate the comets. Well, said Fran, when it finds us, it's going to be able to see that we've stuck them together. Then it will destroy us. Music again. Elgin knew she was right, but there might be hope yet. But, he objected hopefully, that assumes it will find us, that it will even look for us. We're pretty far out here, and it's got all the resources of the inner system. Why would it even bother with us? Fran and Buzzard nodded. These were the very questions they asked in their speculations. This is where my feeling comes in. As yet, we don't have a convincing argument to support it, but my feeling, from all we know about the visitor, is that we are still close enough and our existence important enough that it has to search for us. She was right. He knew she was, even though they didn't have definite proof to support her instinct. Stanton was looking at him, watching his face, and he nodded, his shoulders slumping. He could see that Elgin knew, and proof or no proof, he knew it was time to start preparing to separate the comets. You say it, said Elgin, and I know it's right. He said to Stanton, If it's already on its way, then we'd better get started. Wait, said Fran, we can't just do it. They stopped. We're going to have to debate it and put it up for a vote. And that means we're going to have to come up with some very convincing evidence to support our arguments. When she saw the protest forming on Elgin's face, she said, Not everyone finds my words musical, you know. Elgin couldn't believe that. Rationally, he knew that it must be true, but he had to work hard to see it. Knowing when she was right was so natural that he automatically assumed everyone knew it. But he was a scientist. He had learned to resist assumptions. Understood, he said. It wasn't going to be as easy as just announcing that there would be a debate. They would have to make a case for it. That meant going back and doing more research. They had to look at everything with fresh eyes, trying to find those things that contributed to Fran's feeling, and then finding even more evidence to justify her intuition and to convince everyone else. It was going to be difficult to make this case. Not only was there a powerful community pride in their achievement, there was also their innate conservatism. Roughly 1/5 of their resources could be in the small comet, and that was all they had, possibly for thousands of years. Someone's feeling, even Fran's, was not enough reason to throw it away. Probably pride would be an equally strong deterrent, maybe even more so. Here was the greatest engineering feat of all time. If they took it apart, they would never get to show anyone. On a deeper and even more powerful level, it was also a symbol of their collective effort. This was something they had accomplished together. It was an expression of their unity, of their community. This could be stronger than fear of destruction by a distant threat. It would certainly be more powerful than the logic or rationality they might bring to any argument. They were going to have to put together a strong case if they wanted to have a debate, but that was going to be easy compared to the work they needed to do if they wanted to win the debate. They needed to show the callous cruelty of the visitors, certainly. They needed to show how assiduous it was in discovering and exterminating people, how it followed the slightest clue to its victims. But more important than that, they would have to show that it would come after them, even way out here. The four of them worked hard that evening. They spent a lot of time at the terminal, reviewing as much material as they could that exhibited the behavior of the visitor. As their knowledge of it built up, Elgin and Stanton began to see what Frances meant, independent of their faith in her judgment. Once you come at it with that idea, they thought, the conclusion becomes inevitable. In its programmed need to secure resources, the visitor would be strongly compelled to follow their trail. "This shouldn't be that hard," said Elgin. "It's all right here. All we need to do is show it to the people and they'll see it too." Fran smiled at him again. "I hope you're right," she said, but it was obvious she wasn't so sure. "At any rate, I think we've got enough to take to the planning committee. I think they'll agree we need a debate." With the work done, they retired to the balcony, where they had tea and biscuits while they contemplated the future. Fran said, "This will all have to go," indicating the square. "What do you mean?" said Stanton, surprised. "This will all have to be broken up." "I thought we were just going to separate the comets." Stanton was experienced the shock that would affect everybody. They were going to have to make sure that everyone understood all the implications. "It's more than that," said Fran. "We're going to have to make the comet look dead. In fact, it's going to have to look as if it has never been alive." She looked stern. "We have to break up all our structures. No right angles can remain. We have to open it up and let the heat out. Most of us have to be in hibernation, as well hidden as possible. The only way this will work is if the visitor has no reason to be suspicious." They knew she was right. If they were going to do this, they were going to have to go all the way. Simply breaking off the small comet and trying to lie low wasn't going to be enough. The people of Red Comet had tried to hide from the visitor, and now they were dead along with everyone else. "You're right," said Stanton. "We'll need to put at least as much effort into this project as we did with the joining." They quietly sat with their thoughts, while the square went from the light traffic of late evening to the peace of night. They were aware that they were the only ones who knew what was about to happen to it. Winston barked a surprised laugh when he heard it. "You must be joking," he said. "After all we did to join them?" He scowled. "This isn't something to joke about. We need those resources." "It's no joke," said Fran. "I wish it were." She indicated the other three, who wore equally dour expressions. "We tried to see a way around it, but the evidence has convinced us that we need to have this debate, so the people can see it and make a decision." Winston knew and trusted Fran's intuition. He was also aware of Elgin's reputation, and he had unqualified respect for Stanton. What Buzzard did and how he did it was beyond him, but he knew he had predicted the smoke rings when no one else even thought to look for them. The fact that these four were bringing this forward made him think there might be something to it. But the resources, all that work. He wanted to veto their proposal out of hand, but that was not the way things were done. He took the responsibilities of his position seriously, so he told her to make her case. Then the committee would vote on the debate proposal. Fran did most of the talking, while the other three chimed in with bits of extra information. They played some audio and video recordings to illustrate the danger of being discovered, and they played snippets of the data and descriptions compiled and transmitted while the visitors systematically cleansed the system of people. Fran said, "We believe that the visitor will certainly come after us, and when it does, it will find us. We won't be hard to find. When it does find us, it will see two comets stuck together in a most improbable way, and it will know we're here, and it will annihilate us." "How certain is all this?" asked Winston. "Surely it's nothing more than a hunch based on a feeling." "You're right," said Fran. "It's not absolutely certain. So far, it's only our feeling based on observation. Winston nodded, and she continued. That is, it is only our belief that it will certainly pursue us. That is not certain at all. However, if it does come after us, then it will find us and it will destroy us. Winston nodded more reluctantly. It's the seriousness of the consequences that we feel makes a debate mandatory. Winston checked with Fran to see if there was any more that they wanted to say. When there wasn't, he said, "We can vote on this right now, because of the implications. If separation is necessary, then it's urgent." He cleared his throat and said, "By a show of hands, those in favor of a debate on this matter, raise your hand." Then he repeated it for those against. This vote wasn't unanimous. It barely passed. Both Winston and Nigel voted against.